So I didn't compile any background footage, so here's my face. It is way too hot to be recording outside, so I am in my roommate's room since no one is upstairs at the moment. There were a couple of things that I wanted to talk about today. The first thing that I wanted to go over was overworking yourself, which is something that I did recently. So my day job is I work at a hotel. I do the front desk, housekeeping, and laundry. I pretty much do whatever needs to get done that day, plus front desk. And we've been really short-staffed for a while, and it got to the point where I was one of the most experienced people there, and one of the most reliable people there. And so it got to the point where, because we were so short-staffed, I was working like 16-hour shifts, so I was spending the night at the hotel. I didn't really realize that I was overworking myself because the shifts were honestly so easy for the most part that to do a 16-hour shift, most of that shift was doing the night shift. But I wasn't getting any free time, I wasn't getting to write at all, I wasn't getting a lot of sleep. I wasn't spending a lot of time at home. So I overworked myself quite a bit to the point where on one of my 8-hour shifts, I nearly passed out. And it also got to the point where, so part of my depression is where I'm always tired all the time. I've been working with therapy and medication to try to balance that out. But with overworking myself, it got a lot worse. On one of my 8-hour shifts, I nearly passed out, and even 4-hour shifts were miserable to get through. And I felt like doing anything at all, even small things like just wiping down the counters while I was doing housekeeping, just felt like everything was like pulling me down to the ground. Everything felt so heavy, and like my bones were aching, and that affected my writing a lot too, because not only did I not really have a lot of time to write, any time that I did have to write, I was just so fatigued that all I wanted to do was sleep or lay in bed. And I talked to my boss and got 3 days off in a row. But even on those 3 days, so I found out a few months ago that I have ADHD, undiagnosed ADHD, and I always thought that because with my depression being so fatigued all the time that I didn't have hyperactive ADHD. And my roommates kind of teased me a little bit because they pointed out how anytime for more than like 2 minutes at a time, if I'm not doing something, I just want to claw my eyes out. So when I was supposed to be taking my 3 days break, I was trying to get myself to relax and rest. But I also was bored out of my mind, but also anytime I tried to write, I was too tired to do anything. It was really, really frustrating. So that's affected my writing pretty badly. I think I've started to come out of it a little bit. I'm still tired all the time, but it's starting to go back to normal levels of exhaustion, which still isn't great, but like I said, I've been working on that. One example of how it's affected my writing is I had this new book idea that I got from a dream that I had. It's a new zombie book, and I was so excited to work on it, like going out of my mind excited. But I was just too tired. Every time I opened the document, I just felt like I was just too tired. And it's gotten to the point where the excitement for the project have worn off, so I just feel like I wasted that entire period. And Dib is so great. He helped me out a little bit. I have a Discord server for me and my writing friends, and I told them how I wanted to work on, it's called Starved. I wanted to work on Starved really badly, but I was just too tired, and I was asking if they could ask me some questions about it, some developmental questions. And Dib and one other friend of ours, Kate, they asked me some questions about it, and we figured some stuff out, which is nice because I made some progress on it, but I still feel like because I overworked myself, you know, it's like what everyone says, you know, if you overwork yourself, you're gonna crash, and then you're gonna be less helpful than you were in the first place. So basically I experienced that. Another thing I wanted to talk about was Outlast. If you don't know what Outlast is, it's an indie horror game that came out in 2013. It follows, you play as Miles Upshur, an independent investigative journalist who is investigating Mount Massive Asylum. It's an incredible horror game, and it's my favorite game, and right now it's what I'm hyperfixating on pretty hard, which thank God I have a hyperfixation again, because when I overworked myself, I was too tired to care about anything. And a little bit ago, I decided that I wanted to, by a little bit ago, I mean maybe a month ago, maybe, no, longer than that, a few months ago, I don't know. I decided that I wanted to write Outlast as a book, but change it so that Waylon and Miles, okay, so Miles is the protagonist of the first game, and Waylon is the protagonist of the DLC, which is half a prequel, half happening at the same time as the first game. I hope that makes sense. In the DLC, you play as Waylon Park, who is an IT guy. He's the whistleblower. He's the one who sent the email to Miles that attracted Miles to the story. Hopefully that makes sense. So I decided I wanted to write Outlast, except change it so that Waylon and Miles were more connected and their stories happen kind of as one story. And I also, because I'm me, I wanted to make it gay. So I started working on that for a little bit, and I just didn't give myself enough creative freedom at all. While Dib was reading it, he was talking about how it's a lot of the same thing, and it's tied in, I don't know if I've talked about this on the channel before, but it's tied in with my problem where I don't really utilize the novel medium like I should. I kind of write things as if I'm writing a movie where it's just audiovisual. I don't utilize narration like I could, other techniques like flashbacks and stuff like that. I just don't utilize the abstract, I guess, in a way that I could, and that really showed on my first draft of this fan fiction, because I was literally just transcribing Outlast, and I didn't take into account that there were a lot of decisions that Red Barrels made because they were making a video game, and they had to use certain mechanics like the notes and documents because that was the only way they could get across information to the audience. Whereas I'm writing it as a book, I should be writing it as a book. So Dib has been a miracle worker with the Outlast. I'm calling it Outlast Revisited. I don't know if I'm going to change it, but I probably won't. Dib is so great. Literally cried about him on my first video on this channel, because my eyes are watering. I don't know. I'm not gonna sit here and make him uncomfortable. He's great. Moving on. He's been helping me rework it. We got on a call for 2 hours the other day, just untangling Outlast and then figuring out what we wanted to change, how we wanted to change it, how we wanted to lay it out. We figured out the arcs, we figured out the acts, which we're using the 5-act structure, which I decided I hate. I hate the 5-act structure. It makes no sense to me. I told Dib it felt like writing in Spanish, where I kind of understand what's going on, but not really. And so we figured out the arcs and the acts, and then we, because obviously I'm the one who's obsessed with it, I made a big list, one for Outlast and one for Whistleblower, which is the name of the DLC, of simplified what happens, but specifically the story beats, because when I did the original outline for the first one, I included all the stuff with like you just running around and pushing buttons and pulling levers and turning valves. So Dib was like, okay, so cut that shit out. So I made a list of the story elements that happens, and we got all of that detangled. And then I told Dib, after we do the 5-act structure, I'm translating it to Blake Snyder's beat sheet, because that is what I'm familiar with. And once I started to understand the 5-act structure a little bit, and after we detangled stuff and decided what we wanted to do, I started seeing it in parallel with the Blake Snyder beat sheet. So I got that done pretty quickly, within 2 writing sessions, I think, and I could have done it in 1 session if I didn't have to work. But yeah, so I got the beat sheet done, and now that the beat sheet is done, I am working on the detailed outline, which is chapter by chapter. Okay, and I almost ended this video without answering Dib and Nila's questions. So Dib asks, what is something, I have it written up here because it's too long. What is something you learned that you think of and apply most in your writing? Alternatively, is there something that you should be thinking of? I always know it's a good question when it's one that I kind of don't understand. I think something that I've learned that I apply the most in my writing is diversity. I still have a super long way to go, obviously. I still have a ton to learn and a lot of habits to learn and unlearn, but I think I'm not doing too bad. Implementing sexualities and genders was super easy for me, because obviously, but I think I've been doing a lot better writing people of color. I'm starting to implement more religions in my writing, which is something that I never really think about because I'm not super religious. That's complicated for some other time, but I think I could be doing better at it, but I think I'm making progress, and I think I'm steadily making progress. Is there something you should be implementing, like what we talked about earlier, where I don't utilize the novel medium as I should? I think that's something that I need to focus more on. That's probably my biggest weakness as a writer, which is weird, but you know, not using the abstract enough. And then Nila asked, what is your developmental process? Is it more character or plot driven? Definitely more character driven. I actually have trouble coming up with plots. I come up with characters before I come up with a plot. The developmental process for me is asking a lot of questions and focusing along with the different acts and the beats. That's why I love the beat sheet so much, because it really helps me figure out what needs to happen. The beat sheet you can basically turn into a list of questions of what needs to happen. So, for example, when you're trying to figure out the breaking point, which is collectively all is lost in Dark Night of the Soul, you have to ask yourself, what is the worst thing that could happen to this character that is, that has to do with the story? And then the Dark Night of the Soul, you have to ask yourself, okay, how would they react? And then the Break into 3, you have to ask yourself, what will they do / what is going to get them to do something to get them to try again? How are they going to try again? What are they going to do to try again? And it makes it a lot easier to figure out a plot, basically, and figure out what happens, because I come up with characters and their problems super easily. It's just actually dealing with the problems that I have a lot of trouble, which I think says a lot about me as a person. But yeah, it really helps you come up with plot material. Okay, this was kind of a short video, I'm pretty sure, but I was struggling figuring out what to talk about. But I will see you on the 15th, I believe. Stay proud.